The idea of making your own queen cells can be a little bit intimidating for new beekeepers. I know it took me years to warm up to the idea. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to stay on schedule. Keeping a tight schedule is very important when you're making cells. And I was a little intimidated by the idea of grafting. Once I got started with it, it really didn't turn out to be quite as bad as I thought it would be. I learned the process that we use from a friend of mine, Chris Werner. He runs Indian Summer Honey Farm, and he's a superb queen producer. I spent about 3 or 4 days with him a long time ago, and he showed me his whole process from beginning to end, how they set up their timing boxes for their breeder queens, and how they graft, and how they set up their cell builders. At first I didn't think I'd bother making a video on producing queen cells because there's so many out there already. But somebody pointed out to me that our process is much different than most of those processes that you'll see out there. And I thought because of that maybe people would find it interesting. As we go through this video, I'm going to try to throw in a lot of little tidbits, some information that you might not pick up in a normal queen cell production video, so hopefully that'll make it interesting too. This isn't going to be a 5-minute video. This whole thing takes time. It's a 2-week process from beginning to end. Today's a Friday, and we're going to set up these timing boxes with these expensive breeder queens in them. And by the way, if you're interested in our breeder queens, you can see more about them on our video introducing Caucasian bees into our apiary. Anyway, I'm going to go through it day by day, step by step. And today we're going to start with the process of putting in a polished frame in these cell builders for the queen to lay on, that 4 days from now will be our grafting frame. So we'll get started with that process. So to start off with, we're going to use just a little smoke on these breeder queens. People need to understand that excessive smoke can make bees attack their own queen, gets them all riled up. We call it balling the queen. And we just want to be very careful with these breeder queens. They're valuable. We want to create as little disturbance as possible through this process. A little bit of smoke at the entrance. If it's a nice day, sometimes we don't use any smoke at all. You'll also see that these colonies that these breeder queens are in are not very large, and I'm going to talk more about that at the end of the video. So the first step is just to find the breeder queen. We put in a frame of foundation on the edge to make it easy to get into the box. She's got a big blue fluorescent tag glued on her back, so she shouldn't be hard to spot. And I'm not going to set these frames on the ground. I'm going to hand them to John so that even if I miss her, there's no chance of her climbing off that frame. We're always on the lookout for supersedure cells with these breeder queens. Artificially inseminated queens tend to get superseded more than a normal open-mated queen. Now there she is. You can see she stands out quite well. I'm going to hand this frame to John, and he's going to keep his eye on that queen while I work this box over. These grooves are for pieces of queen excluder that we're going to put in the box. We want to isolate this queen on one frame, so she'll be forced to lay on only that frame. And then 4 days later, that'll be our grafting frame. We'll know we have larvae that are 1 day old or less. So this is the frame we're going to use for her to lay on. John, let's see her. Just bring the frame over. And I'm going to ever so gently just place her right on that frame. Get her to go down there. And she went down beside the frame. So we got a good flat lid here. That's going to force her to remain on that frame 4 days from now, we know that all the eggs she lays today will be 1-day-old larvae, and that way there's no mistake in the age of the larva on the grafting day. Okay, first one done, now we'll do the other. Tommy's going to go through the top box, I'm going to go through the bottom. We're just going to set this honey super aside for the moment until we know where the queen is. And once we find her, we'll put her in this 5-frame nuke box over here. Just get her out of the way where we know where she's at while we do all the manipulations we want. Once we know where she's at, we're just going to set this honey super on to another colony. I've got eggs, so this queen is in my box. Now that we have the queen isolated, we can go to work setting up this colony as a cell starter. We're going to make the bottom half queenless. We're going to make sure that there aren't any eggs or young larvae in there, and tomorrow that's going to be where our grafted cells go. You'll see as we manipulate this thing where we put a frame of pollen, which will be right next to our grafted cells. That's very important. And we'll put an inside feeder, which we will fill with sugar syrup. We want this colony to be highly stimulated, and we'll get the very best results with that. We'll also give them a couple empty drawn combs so they'll have a place to store some of the syrup and honey coming in, so they don't plug out so badly that they want to put webbing in between our queen cells. And we're going to try to put at least 10 or 11 frames of bees in it. And overcrowding a starter is the way to get the very best results. Another very important thing, and actually more important than overcrowding, is the quantity of nurse bees that are in the unit. It takes at least 200 nurse bees to do a good job on each queen cell. So we're going to put 48 queen cells in this thing. So let's use the number 50 for easy math. 50 times 200 is 10,000 bees. 10,000 bees is about, that's approximately what a 3-pound package will hold, which will cover about 5 or 6 frames, deep frames. We're going to put 10 to 12 frames of bees. We're going to stuff them in this thing. And that should guarantee that we have enough nurse bees to tend to our 48 cells. It's also going to give us that overcrowded condition that's so important for good cell building. So the first thing we're going to do is go through this colony and look for any frames that have eggs or larvae on it. Even though we're looking so closely for eggs, every once in a while you can miss a couple. So later in the process, a few days from now, we will be rechecking these frames to make sure they haven't started any queen cells on any frames besides our grafted cells. This frame has a little bit of hatching brood on it, but no eggs and no larvae, and it's loaded with pollen, so this would be a good choice for our pollen frame to go right next to our grafts. The next thing, I'm going to put this inside feeder in. Next comes our frame of pollen. This is hatching brood, so it's a good frame to put inside the cell starter. Something else we want in here is we actually want to find one frame of open larvae to give the nurse bees something to work on until tomorrow when we put our grafted cell in. A lot of people don't do that. This frame has some eggs and open larvae on it, so it's going to be our dummy frame until tomorrow. I guess you call it a dummy frame. So I'm going to put a bee on that for brood, and it will come out of there tomorrow. Okay, pollen, open brood, another frame with hatching bees and pollen, and then the rest is just going to be frames of nectar, maybe one or two open ones so they have a place to store nectar and syrup coming in. Okay, so that's essentially our cell starter right there, and we're going to shake in a whole lot of bees here. Before we start shaking in bees, we're going to fill that feeder with thin sugar syrup. We put this little landing board on here for shaking bees into the colony. A sheet, this is actually an old t-shirt, but a piece of sheet or anything that the bees can walk on, it will work. It's just a thin piece of plywood under it, piece of t-shirt. Works pretty good. We start by shaking some inside, and then the rest are going to go on this landing board. We're going to end up leaving the queen in the second story box. She's actually going to be over a double screen divider board with the entrance facing backwards. And we're only going to leave her with a few frames of bees, even though she'll have maybe 6 or 8 frames of brood. The heat rising from the colony below will help keep that upper story warm, so she won't need as many bees as she normally would. You can see what happens here. The bees that you dump on that landing board, they just walk right on in. It's a lot better than dumping them on top and trying to squish them all in. Well, Tommy's going to set up that second story with the queen and get it ready. He's going to put it over the double screen board. Then I'm going to go into another colony and find the queen and shake even more bees on this thing. We want to get 10 or 12 frames of bees in this colony that only has 8 frames in it. Now he's going to put the box with the queen in it back on top. We'll shake a couple more frames in there and we'll be done with that unit for today. We'll move on to the next. All the nurse bees that have never been out of their own colony are going to stay there. Of course, all the field bees that have been out and know their way home will return. This 14-foot trailer is what we call our grafting shack. We've always tried to stay mobile because we never knew where we were going to be trying to set up cell builders. When we used to take our bees down to South Georgia for the winter, we'd take this trailer down there so we could graft and get started making cells early. It's pretty simple. It's just a 14-foot enclosed trailer. We'll take a look at it. We put a pot of hot water on a little propane stove to keep it hot and humid in here, and it does the trick. Jesse and Tommy are putting JZ, BZ queen cell cups on rails right now. You can get these things in multiple colors. Like if you want to keep track of a different day or a different breeder, you can have a different color cup. That helps. We put 16 of these things on one rail. They have a little nipple on the bottom that just fits into the slice or the groove on the frame rail. Each frame holds 3 of these bars. There's 16 cups on each bar. There's a picture of the frame right there. And that gives each cell starter 48 cells to work on. So if everything went well, that frame will be full of very young larvae, because we placed the breeder queen on it 4 days ago. And there she is with that big fluorescent blue dot. So Jesse's taking the excluder pieces out now. We don't need those anymore. We're just going to turn her loose in the colony again. And Tommy is going to ever so gently pick her up and place her on one of the other frames. And she's done her job. Until next week, we'll do it all over again. Okay. When you're brushing the bees off in a situation like this, you want to use a real bee brush, not a brush made with animal hair. It's important that you're using synthetic bristle brushes because animal hair can really kind of make the bees mad. So they just cover the frames when they're not using them with a warm, moist rag to keep the humidity up. In his book, Breeding Super Bees, Steve Tabor states that he believes 95% humidity on the larva is probably the best. He even says it's more important than temperature. 70 degrees and 95% humidity is a lot better than 95 degrees and 70% humidity. You got to keep these things moist. I wanted to show a close-up of this grafting tool. This is what a lot of people use these days. You can see the spring action. I can get close to this. Focus. Yeah, when you get the larva on the end of the tip, the little spring action just pushes it off into the cell. I think that's why people prefer them. In the old days, before these tools were available, people used it just about anything as a grafting tool. I've heard of people using pieces of coat wire that were smashed with a hammer. You can buy specialty tools that purchased in the catalogs that look like dental tools. Some of the guys 100 years ago were just simply using toothpicks. Anyway, this is called the Chinese grafting tool. The ones we get from Man Lake are better than the ones we get from Date Ant. I don't know if somebody got a good batch or a bad batch, but we prefer the ones that come from Man Lake. And Tommy simply just uses reading glasses that he got from Walmart. What power? 125 or something? Or
3 power.
3 power. Okay, I'll shut up. I won't say any more about that.
And our headlamps are.
Yeah, and a headlamp. Yeah. Oop, yeah. And that works.
When I get my grafting tool, the first thing I do is I stick it in the hot water to make it pliable at the end so that it's easy. It'll go underneath the larva and lift it. And so it doesn't take much. It just takes a little dip there, and it makes that really pliable. Yeah. And go in, try to lift it. You don't want to flip them. And you lay it into the cup.
Okay. I'm going to go get my close-up lens, see if we can get a shot of that larva on there. I'll be back.
Okay.
That's what it looks like on the end. It is not very big.
That little C shape there.
Okay, all the grafting is done. They're inserting the bars into the frames. Okay, next phase is to get these grafted cells into a cell starter. That thing is stuffed full of bees, which is what you want. Tommy's going to take out that frame of open brood that we left in there yesterday. We'll take the bees off of that frame, shake them in, and that frame will go upstairs with the queen. That's why we left only 9 frames in that box yesterday. They're still feeding the feeder from yesterday. If there wasn't a honey flow going on, we'd probably top that feeder off and make sure it was good and full. Gorged bees, overcrowded bees with lots of young nurse bees makes your best cell starter. So in 2 days we'll be back to reverse these boxes. We'll put the queen on the bottom with a queen excluder, and we'll put that bottom box on the top, and it will then become a Queenright cell finisher. Right now that bottom box is a cell starter. So I brought the bee brush along. I normally don't mess with the cells when they're brand new and just started, but just for the sake of this video, we're gonna brush a few bees off and see how the cells look when they're just 2 days old. We'll take a look in here and make sure the queen's doing okay. Shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, everything looks happy up here. This is what I like to see, lots of extra bees hanging out on the underside of this double screen board. We have this 3/4 inch rim around this board just to help contain those bees. Normally our double screen boards don't have that rim, but we have special boards just for this cell building process for all the extra bees. Lots of bees, looks good. Oh yeah, this looks really good. Looks like we got lots of cells started here. It's not 100% take, but it's pretty good. Bees are a little excited, and it looks like it's going to rain any minute, so I'm trying to hurry up, get through this. Okay, so the queen's on the bottom. Put a queen excluder on. Put the cells up above. This thing just got changed from a cell starter to a Queenright cell finisher. And if everything goes right, we'll come back next week and these cells will be all sealed and we'll be able to harvest them. If we didn't have a honey flow going on, I would probably refill this feeder just to make sure that they had all the nourishment they needed to get those cells built properly. But we still have this honey flow going on, so I'm not going to bother feeding them today. The sugar syrup that we normally feed them is 1:1 sucrose. We make our own. It works really well for building cells, and it's starting to rain, so I'm going to put this thing back together and turn the camera off. Okay, that looks pretty good.
Brush the bees off and get a count on that. How many are we missing there?
1, 2, 3.
3 out of 48. That's not bad. Every once in a while we'll get 100% take, and of course we're real pleased when that happens, but this is more typical, kind of like a 90% take, or sometimes it goes real good, sometimes it's poor for reasons we don't understand, but generally we can count on, what we do is we bank on 75%. When we're figuring out what we have to do, we'll make an extra 25%, and we almost invariably have extra cells, and then we have to decide whether we want to throw them away, give them away, or make more nukes. Usually we just make more nukes and get them used up. Okay, Tommy's been loading up our little wooden rails with the queen cell protectors. We don't always use these, but in some instances we do. We purchase them bulk by the bag, and we do try to recycle them. You can use them over and over and over as long as they don't get lost or messed up. So Tommy uses his headlamp to what we call candle these cells. Oddly enough, even though they look perfect, occasionally there'll be a cell that actually doesn't hatch, and so we actually have a look at them before we take them out into the field. Let's see. So explain what you're looking for.
I look right in this gray cup for a larvae, and you can see that. I hope the camera can pick it up.
I don't think it can, but you can explain it.
All of these have larvae in them, so that's good.
Okay, Tommy is putting these cells in our blocks with cell protectors. When a colony kills a cell, they always go in from the side and put a hole in the side and tear it down. With these cell protectors, they can't do that. The cell will emerge in these. The virgin will slip through the bottom just as if she was coming out her own cell, and it ensures that she hatches. Now, whether they accept the virgin or not is a different matter, but we definitely know that the cell will hatch and emerge with these cell protectors. You can see they have little spikes in the side. That makes it easier to stick it in a comb and have it stick. This is the control panel for our little incubator. We don't have a big fancy incubator like some of the big queen breeders use. We use these egg incubators. We have 4 or 5 of them, and each one will hold about 200 cells, so it makes it easy to put it on the back seat of the truck and take it out to the bee yard. This one, I will put a link in the description of this video where you can get this particular incubator. Anyway, you can see the temperature we've got it set at. You can see what the humidity is. That's all good. I'm going to have Jesse open it up so we can look at the inside. Each bar holds 20 cells. That's what we carry out into the field with us. We keep the incubator in the back of the truck, keep it warm. Of course, these days it's so hot that that's not an issue, but we have an inverter in the truck that we plug in and convert to 110 current. We plug these incubators in and carry them around in the back of the truck. We, of course, treat them very carefully. Usually put them in somebody's lap so they can kind of cushion any vibration from the road. We like to put our Queenright nukes up against a tree line or a brush line, anything they can use as an orientation. Sticks on the ground, bricks, rocks, anything that they can sight in on. We have a better success rate when we do that. When we just put them out in an open field like that in the center, it seems like our take is just a little lower.
This is a perfect example of why we use cell protectors. These nucs were just made. They were just brought in, dropped down 15 minutes ago. They probably don't even know they're queenless yet. And in order to make sure they don't tear our cell down, we want to install it with a cell protector. And these nucs are meant to be queen mating nucs for us. We'll be running them the rest of the summer. We like to put the cell on the perimeter of the brood. That's where those little spikes on the cell protector come in good. It really holds them on the comb. Again, these aren't real large nucs, just 2 frames with a little brood on each frame. And it's just as simple as that. I think I've got enough footage to put this video together and publish it, but I just wanted to do one more thing. Jesse and Tommy did several other cell builders, and they actually put 64 cells in them. They thought the bees were plenty strong enough to handle it, and we did want some extra cells this week, so I'm going to check on a couple of them and see what the take was. We normally do put 48 in. 64 is a rarity for us, but this time we did it, and we'll see how it turns out. Several of these have 64 cells in them. Let's pick on this one. Feeder's empty, so they used all the feed. And as you can see, we have 2 bars in this one side by side. I think they put 2 rails on each bar. That would give us a total of 64. This first bar looks pretty good. Now it's a Saturday today, and they just grafted these on Tuesday, so this being the 6th day from an egg, they should be just being sealed today. I'll be very careful with them. They're still a little delicate. Pretty good take. Looks like they're all sealed. Well, there's a couple that aren't sealed yet. There's one that's not sealed yet, not sealed. So these cells would be 5 days from grafting. Looks like we're missing 1, 2, 3. Missing 3 on this one, so that'd be 3 missing from 32. There's a couple that aren't sealed yet, and this one's missing 1, 2 out of 32, so 5 out of 32, let's see, 5 out of 64 is not bad. That's a good take. I would consider that a good take. These cells still have a lot of royal jelly in the top. I can see it. They're just full of royal jelly up at the top, and that's what you'd want to see and expect to see with good cells at this time. So this cell builder is going to get used again on Tuesday. We're going to put these cells in an incubator and manipulate this colony just like you saw earlier in the video and have them do it again. If you got a good colony that's in good condition, you can do it over and over and over. Occasionally you might have to give them a little extra boosting from another colony to keep them in good shape. We have a bee yard that's about a quarter mile from here, and if we feel like we need extra bees, we will take some 3-pound packages down there and shake nurse bees into those 3-pound packages and bring them back here and shake them in. Of course, the field force will go back home because it's just a quarter mile away. That's one way of continuously using one colony over and over and over. And some colonies are actually good enough on their own where they don't need any help. Anyway, I'm happy with what I see here. We'll be back here to remanipulate this on Monday, turn it into a queenless cell starter with the queen on top, and then graft again into it on Tuesday. I don't see any, just from what I see here, I don't see any reason why it won't do it again. Alright, that's good. This is something that anybody with a few colonies can do. It only takes, as you can see, it only takes one colony to really make a batch of cells. If you don't have extra bees to shake in and your colony's not that strong, you don't have to make 48 cells. You can make 10 or 20 or 30. It really comes down to that ratio of nurse bees to the cells being constructed. Anybody can do it. I would recommend for people that feel intimidated by the process, just do it. There might be a failure or two, but that's okay. Steve Tabor, who you've seen me quote a few times in this video, is actually a friend of mine, and he said the most important part of building cells is to create the right environment. He said having the right conditions was just as important, maybe even more so, than having the proper breeder queen. So the information's here in the video. Read whatever books you can get your hands on. Create the right environment and you can be successful. Even the grafting at first seems a little intimidating, but just go for it. Just do it. Skill will come with time. Skill comes with practice. It's very satisfying to create your own cells. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it.